Where to start? Let's not start with the plant list. Let's start with the basics. Riprap. Anyone know what riprap is? Rocks stacked by man up a hillside to control erosion. And so there's an art to riprap. Some of it's done, kind of just back it up and dump it over the hill and maybe it will stay intact. Some better folks actually stack it so it locks itself in place. That's called riprap, okay? It's usually boulders, rounded like this. Doesn't have to be, but that's kind of, you'll see entire neighborhoods filled with riprap. And that's pretty good at holding in the hills. Mine was done about 20 years ago. We were in an older house, early 90s. And so now some dirt's filtered in and that fabric that was put underneath the rock is starting to gather some dust. I'm starting to get some weeds and stuff coming up. So there's a little bit of maintenance to keep it going, but it's done a pretty effective job. My hill, we're on a classic mountain hill, 2-story house, and the driveway, you kind of drive into it like this, and you can live on the upper story. Downstairs is the basement and the theaters and extra bedroom, and then you walk out the back, and it's this classic hillside. It's pretty challenging to keep the water flowing around everything without saturating into the basement. So I had some issues early on where the landscape, the water would seep into the basement. We had to put gutters in and get it to flow around. Those are things that you do basically for landscaping. Now I'm dealing with that a dry wash that was put in 20 years ago is now over the years kind of filled up with some dirt, and the rains have flowed, and now it's some maintenance. I have to go in and probably clean that out. It's had a couple good rains where it was frightful. It just overflowed everything. And now it's overflowing its banks because I need to maintain that. So probably this winter, when I've got a little more time, pull that out, reset it, and then so the wash is a little more defined. That's riprap, okay? Concrete, if it's really bad, they just cement it. You'll see sometimes that. The way I've really controlled most of my erosion is I actually put in, so you got a hill like this, that's literally, maybe not that, maybe it's like this. It's a hill, okay? Beautiful vistas of the dells. Great, that's the great thing about it, great vistas, but it's hard to landscape. What I've personally done is I've just taken tiers, I don't know how to describe that, but basically I'm doing this. I've created a whole series of raised beds. They're beautiful. And then in here I'll backfill and I'll just plant in these, and that's how I'm controlling most of it. And I've got waterfalls built in, ponds, but it's pretty nice when you're all said and done, but it's been purposely designed to control a lot of that water flow. So there I went down to Yavapai Block, which is the place that manufactures most of our retaining block and patio block. They're on Sundog Ranch Road in the industrial park, easy to find, Yavapai Block. They've got the bigger block that kind of stays in place better. Some of those smaller block, retaining block from Home Depot and Lowe's, they're cheaper, but they don't stay in place. They're just too cheap. They're too small. They're trying to meet a price point, not get an effective block. And so I find Yavapai Block for myself is what I would use. And that's what I'd recommend for you all if you're thinking about creating beds to retain things and define out the back patio. That's really worked out well, and it gave me, instead of dirt, and I'm dealing with native earth, I could bring in my own. And now what I used to struggle with when I first moved in, now it's very easy. I can throw anything, I can look at it and it will grow because the soil is so good. Whereas before it was this dug out hillside with sterile soil. Some of you, if it's really serious, I mean if it's really been dug out, the backhoe really cleared off that little bit of topsoil, some of you literally are left with dead soil. There's no living thing. There's not a worm. There's not a mycorrhizal fungi. There's nothing growing. That soil is dead. And so you'll plant a plant inside your, especially newer homes, you'll plant a plant and 3 years later, it hasn't grown. It's still the same, hasn't died, hasn't grown. It's because the plant, there's nothing in there for it to grow into. There's no living things there. So we'll show you how to enliven that soil so so that the birds will be attracted. They'll be pecking around looking for worms. The roots will start growing. You'll start to front load the mycorrhizal colonies that encourage root growth. We'll show you how to do that. Okay, that'll be towards the end. So some of you are dealing with soil that won't grow things. So you're gonna have to think that through. How am I going to plant in this rock pile and make it grow? Some of you got these beautiful boulders that they've kind of built the house around. That's great. And now you want to soften some things up where the water's flowing through that. You're trying to control the water flow. There's a lot of different situations here in the Prescott area. The mountains, we're dealing with mountains. Even my first house was in Prescott Valley back in the early 90s. This is back when Prescott Valley had dirt roads. No sewers, there had no infrastructure. Dirt road, you had your own septic system, and they ran an electrical line to it. It was rough. It was very primitive back then. They've now they're bigger than Prescott. They're a glorious city anymore. I'm proud of them. But back then, even that lot, which seemed like it was flat, wasn't. The water would still flow, and you had to control how the water would flow. So you may think you've got a flat yard, but still you want to control some of that erosion, that kind of thing. So if you've got a ditch or something, probably the easiest, backfill it with some rock, riprap. That'll hold it in place. Or we call what's called a French drain, which is, how do I draw a French drain? Let me try to describe it. A French drain is water keeps pooling right here. I want to get it out of that part of the yard and over down to the neighbors. Just get it off your yard downhill. So you take a 4-inch pipe that's perforated. You dig a trench about this deep. You put the pipe down below, and then you backfill it with some 3/4 inch minus or larger rock. And so all the water gathers there and it carries off. That's called a French drain. That's a technical term. I don't know why they call it French, but that's the name of it. Say a landscaper, you go, I want a French drain right here. They go, gotcha. They know exactly what you're talking about. French drain. It's an easy way to get water away from the basement, away from the foundation. It's an easy way to get things away. So this property here is loaded with hundreds upon hundreds of feet of French drain, because this was basically a bog area when we bought it. Springs, the water table we're basically sitting on the water table right now. So this structure had to have special helpful piers, floating footers, because we were on the water table. Literally right here, a grader served as a sink into the water. We had to get a trackhoe to pull him out. It was ridiculous. I was going to flatten the nursery out. The consultant said, folks can't get up this hill very easy. Flatten it down. Okay. Until we hit the water. So we're having to use French drains to pull that water away and get it down the street. So it's dry for you all to shop at. It's easier to display plants in. So French drains can work very well for you as well. They're very inexpensive and easy to install. You can do it yourself. Head down to any home center and they'll have 4-inch pipe perforated, dig a trench, backfill with rock. And you want 3/4 inch size rock or larger. That's about that big. Otherwise, pea gravel, the smaller stuff, the silt tends to fill in, it clogs up too fast. Just experience. It's kind of some standard landscape techniques that really works. That'll help you out to keep that blunder factor kind of to a minimum. Okay, you'll make some mistakes, but we want to minimize that. Okay. You guys doing okay? We're getting to, this is a technical piece, so we'll get to plants soon. We want to cover some of these. Another idea too, and I drew a couple things. Let's see if I can show this. What this is not, let me describe it. This is your house. This is a rock wall that the contractor put in, and back here's a rock face. Just solid rock face. Some of you have that. Okay, some of you you walk out and within 10 feet, rock, straight up. And the neighbor's right up there. How do you soften that? That was the idea with this. So the idea was, everyone wants to plant inside the rock face or this hill. Don't torture yourself like that. It's hard to get things to grow there. You can't water, can't care for it. You can't get planting in there. You'll hurt yourself trying to plant there. So the idea is plant at the base and use some vines to grow up. We'll show you which vines to use here in a second. And then plant some at the top and train the vines to grow down. Now they don't naturally want to grow down, but you could take the tendrils and pin them to the hillside and then force them, train them to grow. So you'll get these vines to fill in that way. Far easier than trying to had to talk too many people, customers out of trying to plant inside. They want to plant one right here and then grow it this way and that way. Let's think this through a little easier so you don't kill yourself trying to plant upside this hillside. Some of the hills are too steep. And so that's an idea that can really work, okay? Another idea is, another idea here is don't use vines. Just screen it. So I brought these plants here going right at the base. In fact, you could plant here and just plant some, I'm not a very good artist. I'm terrible at Pictionary even. I mean, it's just not so good. Plant some upright junipers and cypress and cedars and just hide it. So instead of trying to grow on the face, grow in front of it and grow up it. Some ideas with that would be like, this is probably, you folks in California will like this one. Italian cypress. It doesn't climb, doesn't spread, it just grows straight up, nice green, easy to grow, cylinder, just kind of straight up, not very wide. Put several of them in, it'll soften that all up and all of a sudden it looks good. And the roots are pretty aggressive, where they'll secure that soil in so it won't try to come down in the back patio. Another idea, another plant, I like this one. I've grown this one several times. This is called Moon Glow Juniper. Now junipers, you know we're surrounded by juniper forests. They grow really well here. They naturalize, easy to grow. They don't get bugs. They're just super easy to grow, consistent. So I like the color of the Moon Glow because it's got that classic Arizona blue. Sometimes that goes with it goes with the landscape that's naturally out there. Moon Glow gets up, just about head high, and about 6 feet wide, just a nice thick. It'd be an easy one to plant right in front of a rock face, or you got a neighbor, that new RV they're so proud of, Class A, they park right at your back, like living room. Now you get to enjoy it too. Plant some of these there and it just goes away in a few years. Okay, fast growing.
What's that called again?
Moon Glow Juniper. And everyone goes, I get allergies with junipers. I don't want junipers. Oh, in fact, they're cutting down their junipers. You know you're surrounded, right? There's a forest of junipers around you. If you've got an allergy to junipers, having one of these in your yard is going to make zero difference. Because have you ever seen a male juniper just explode with pollen? It literally explodes. It goes poof. This huge 30-foot cloud of pollen starts wafting across the forest. It fills your backyard with pollen. It's the males that are the problem, not the females. You know that? There's male and female. The males are the problem. Did you hear me, ladies?
Yes.
The gals put the berries on, so now you can go up. This is a good cocktail party story. So the females have berries. They're the only ones. The males have no berries, but they'll have the yellow hue in the spring. They'll kind of put on this yellow color to it. That's the pollen, and he's pollinating her. So that's kind of how that works. These they try to breed in just the females, so they have less pollen, less prone, and then they're not big enough to really do any they're not an issue. So I like junipers myself because they're easy to grow and they naturalize. This one I use a lot. This one I use in my front yard. So again, you're looking down into our front yard. We got this beautiful courtyard, water features, art. I mean, it feels like a secret garden. But it's not so secret because people are going up and down the road, driving by. Actually, our yard, people will drive in looking for us, but let's see what he's doing. So let's drive up the hill, then slow down going, let's see. It's not very private. So I feel like I'm on display all the time, like a monkey in a cage. I use this at the front yard to kind of give me that screen. It's filled in thick enough now. Again, I've got 2 raised beds to control that grade. And then I plant inside those beds, and this is what I'm using to screen for privacy and to hold the bed in, that kind of stuff. So right now I planted them 3 years ago. They were little like this. Now they're well above head high. And I've got a neighbor across the street that's looking down into me yet. They'll be gone next year. So I'll have complete, even the neighbors can't even get in there. So that's a good strong evergreen. Gets up, Spartan juniper, gets up about 6-8 feet. Good solid, way above head height, and about this wide. It's just a nice, easy growing evergreen. Okay. This is one that's called Blue Point juniper. So I guess we've got Italian cypress and 3 junipers. I just picked upright evergreens. There's a whole series. All of those plants are upright evergreens. Go over there if this is of interest at all. There's a lot of choices. I just picked 4 of my favorite. Blue Point juniper, I just like the blue again. It looks like a juniper. Some of these look less like a juniper. But again, it naturalizes very easy, gets up about 8 foot, 5 foot wide. Nice, beautiful, perfect shape to it. So that's a good, easy way to screen that hillside, bring the eye forward, and so you feel like you've got this secret garden kind of feel. Yet it's super easy to maintain. Once these get going, you never really have to prune them. You don't do anything with them. They don't really get bugs. They're pretty easy to deal with. I get a little bit of spider mites on them in summer. I know what to look for. And then if I do happen to get it, I spray them and then I'm all done. So that's some ideas. So that's at the base here. Instead of growing vines, we're trying to get spreading shrubs and stuff. That might be an easy way out. One other idea and then we'll go into plants. Be careful not to turn your landscape into a formal garden. We tend to deal with informal gardens here. Now formal is perfectly spaced across the yard, East Coast. Think East Coast gardens. You're perfectly lined up, things are in perfect squares. It's you nurses, engineers, accountants love formal gardens, like perfect, in order, when everything's perfectly shaped. We tend to be more free-form, more natural, because we're in the forest. In the land, we're kind of blending in with our natural landscapes. So we tend to have more informal landscapes. With that being said, the mistake I find a lot of folks make with shrubs, we'll get into here in a second, to control the landscapes, to soften up all that rock that's out there, they'll line them up too perfectly. So think in terms of triangles, not in straight rows. That'll help your landscape feel more natural. Your guests, your family won't really know why it feels better than more formal, but a lot of folks, they'll come in and just put this one line across and it's too formal. If you think in terms of triangles, so don't go one straight line, give me 2 lines and just kind of zigzag it through. It'll look much more natural and it'll fill in better and it will just naturally feel better. The landscape will feel, it's a feeling is what it is. There's a science to it, they've actually measured it, but for you all, just think in terms of triangles across that hill, around that rock lawn. Think in terms of triangles and it will feel better at the end. If you've got more formal landscapes, some of you do have that, that's okay. Topiaries, spirals. I've got some of that in my yard. Big pots at the front of the garage with spiral junipers. Looks good. But my landscape is more informal. Even that at the front yard, I mentioned I put Spartan junipers to screen the neighbors and screen that road. Even that, I've got 2 beds and I zigzagged it. One Spartan here, the next one up there, the next one down here, and I zigzagged it this way around the yard so it looks and fills in more naturally. And it will fill in the gaps. I'll get more privacy faster that way. But the idea was, I've got very limited space, only for me to you, to get this screening done. How am I going to do that and keep it still feeling natural? By zigzagging it through, and now you can never tell that it was purposely done that way. It feels like it just grew up naturally by itself. That way, it's all been designed. Okay, does it make sense? The other one is, don't plant, where'd my pen go? Other big mistake, that's okay, just keep it there and I'll pick it up later. The other idea, I could probably do this better with, let's pick a good example. Let's pick this one, I guess. So instead of planting this on the hillside, say I've got a hill like this, everyone wants to plant it like this. They think it's got to go to the sun or something perfectly. Don't do that. Plant it in the side of the hill like this and put the drip emitter up there. So take on the slope of that hillside. Much easier to plant that way. It looks more natural. And then you put your drip emitter on the top of the hill up here and it just drips down the soil this way. That'll really help you make it look quicker, it fills in faster, far easier to plant. That's just a mistake I see not a mistake. You can do it either way. I'm talking about ease of planting, ease of getting in the yard, and just its health of the plant. That technique will naturalize and fill in much faster and be easier to plant in than trying to make everything like this on that hillside. Okay, this is a spreading juniper. This is called blue rug. This is as tall as it gets. You see it's putting on these tendrils like this. This one plant, the beauty of these spreading shrubs is that you can put one emitter right here, maybe a couple, and then this plant will spill out and go 6-8 feet wide with one root structure. And the roots will be similarly, will mirror that. This is a great erosion control. We use this a lot in rock lawns. Well, it's just so much crushed granite. I mean, you can get too much of a good thing. I know it's easy care, but it looks like the lunar landscape. Put some of these on instead of lawn, you put these on, all of a sudden it starts to soften up all that gold, or you got too much chocolate, too much, whatever that color rock is, this helps to soften that. But it's not a lawn, but it sort of fills in and looks like a lawn. Very good at erosion control, very good on hillsides. Or again, it's a juniper, so junipers, you know they're going to naturalize great here. Yeah?
I bought 2 of those and planted it on a hillside. One died, the other one is not spread whatsoever, and that was last year.
Yeah, we'll go on that at the end. We'll show you how to plant to make them really fill in faster. So it's struggling with that hillside. We'll show you how to modify that. So did you hear that? So she had 2 of those, 2 spreading junipers. One died and one's struggling. So they're not happy with that hillside. So we'll show you how to modify that. That'll be towards the end though. I don't want to jump the gun too fast or I get derailed. Forget where I was. What was I doing? What's my name? Okay, so those are some of the ideas. I just wanted the concepts, okay? Some quick things, kind of hone you in so you're making less mistakes. You're making mistakes in the right direction at least, okay? So that'll be some things that are really up your game. And with a group this size, there's 40 of us, there's gonna be so many different landscape situations. Each one is unique. That's when come talk to us and we can help you guide you in with that one. Or iPads are great. Snip, look what I'm dealing with. How do I deal with this? We can help you design that. That's what we do all day long, okay? Now what I did is I brought some plants. I want to go over those. I put them in with traditional ground covers, perennials that spread. That's these. I've got vines. Many of the vines you think grow up stuff. Not necessarily. They can be used as ground covers as well. I'll show you how to use those. And I've got some shrubs, which I personally like, just because they're easier to maintain, that spread. And again, you'll get a list here by the first of next week of all these plants broken out into different segments, okay? But take some notes. And then you can come up afterwards and look at them, peruse them. Why don't we start with the perennials. Now perennials are those plants that come back every year. Annuals live for the year and then die in the winter. Perennials come back bigger and bigger every year. So some of these will run. They either group out, they either bunch up and just spread by a cluster, or they'll send runners, touch, grow another plant, send runners, touch. They grow like that. So these are all plants that can do that. We start with probably the most popular one. I sell hundreds of these. I'm paying for my kids' college tuition with this one plant. You want to know what it is? It smells wonderful. Rosemary. I use this quite a bit in my backyard because it's evergreen. It only gets maybe knee high, so it gets a little bit taller than this. This is Huntington carpet rosemary or creeping rosemary. They make a bush, it gets quite large, and they make a creeping one, like a carpet. So this one gets up about knee high and then spreads. I do notice that it will spread and then touch the ground, form another one, keep spreading. Wherever there's moisture and food, it will keep growing. So I've planted some that are this big. There was this size, so I put them in the ground, and now they're as big as for me to use. Just spreading out. Nice green. It starts to bloom like this lavender flower in March. It's great for pollinators. Birds, hummingbirds, when they migrate, they look for this as they're migrating north. It's a good food source for a lot of the pollinators. So great evergreen, and you can use it in the kitchen. There you go. Most herbs will keep bugs away, yes. In fact, I don't know why. People like herbs a lot, but animals don't. Rabbits don't eat it, javelina don't bother it. So if you're exposed next to the forest or something, this is a good way to go because the animals are less likely to bother it. I can notice that pack rats will sometimes make nests in some of these, so there's something out there that will report you. But I think all rats should die anyway, so coming in my yard, you're probably at grave risk. You're not going to be there for long. So rosemary, good perennial, evergreen, and it's fragrant. Okay. Let's go with, if you're into natives, this is gopher plant. Gets up about, I don't know, to maybe 18, 24 inches spread. So this plant will turn into something this big. Not necessarily an aggressive root, a deep root, but it's evergreen. It does this and it just looks like it should be in Arizona. They call it gopher plant because it's supposed to repel gophers. It doesn't do that. You couldn't plant enough of these to repel gophers. Maybe you throw it over his head or something. So I've literally seen gophers right next to it. There's this myth that you do some internet on this, search on this, they go, oh, plant gopher plant, it will repel all your gophers. It doesn't do that. You're planting it because it's drought hardy, it's native, it naturalizes by itself, and it's evergreen. Has a pretty yellow flower. That's why you're planting it. So if you like this, it's a good plant for you. Okay, full sun. It likes hot, blistering, surrounded by rock, and then still take a blow dryer to it. It likes that kind of heat and sun and bright. That's what it likes. Again, it's a native. Okay. This is one I use quite a bit. This is a cat mint, not catnip, cat mint. So I use this a lot on the edge of my hillsides because this will get up about this tall, gets about this big around, beautiful mountain. It blooms like this most of the year. And so it just rub the flowers. This has this beautiful minty fragrance to it. And I notice butterflies, the pollinators love this plant. Hummingbirds are always all over it. It's a good perennial, drought hardy. Again, it naturalizes. You'll never have just one. It's going to want to reseed, reroot, re-come up. But it's not the same maintenance as a Russian sage. That purple spiky flower that's up about this tall, that thing's a weed. If let go by itself, it takes some maintenance to keep it under control. This one takes far less maintenance. And it's just a little guy. It's a good erosion control, easy care kind of plant. Animals do not eat this. So rabbits, nothing bothers this. But the butterflies and hummingbirds do. That's a winner. Okay. This one this is called, anyone know what this is? Ajuga. Ajuga this is as tall as it gets. Just grows like this. I put this next to my steps coming down the side of the house because I got a lot of steps from the driveway down the back to the backyard. So I wanted something to soften all those steps. I didn't want just riprap. It's not very welcoming. We love to entertain, have parties. The backyard is where we do it. And so we've got big pots with rosemary coming in, welcome signs. I mean, it's glorious. You feel like I want to go back there. This I use to soften the edges of the steps because it's just it gets a little blue flower to it. Looks like this. It's just pretty. Low care. It just runs, touches the ground, spreads, runs, touches the ground, spreads like that. So this would be great in between rocks, boulders. You want a plant to look like it's flowing in between the boulders. This is a great one for that. And it's hardy as can be. Don't ask me about animals, I don't know. I've got it in my backyard where the dogs are. It's fenced. Okay. Sedums. We use these in rock gardens often, in dish gardens, places where it's hot, dry, and I just don't want to water very much. There's a whole series of sedums down in the lower greenhouse, probably a dozen different varieties. I picked one. They come in greens and blues and oxblood red kind of color, all kinds of colors. You can mix and match. The thing to watch though is, this is folks from Phoenix, Tucson. There's a series of them that are annuals up here. They won't go through our winter. They grow down the desert, but they'll grow fine in the summer. And they get obliterated come about Thanksgiving. They turn into black mush. So you want to watch which ones you're planting if you're going to go with sedums. You want to go with the perennial varieties. And all those down there, they're all perennials. The ones if you buy them from Waters, you want them to live outdoors. And they all get a little flower like that. They're kind of like a cactus, only without the spines and the spikes and the needles and the harsh, without the bite. So these you can rub up against. You just want to touch them. I use a lot of these in containers, and these tendrils will flow down and just flow right to the go, get 2-3 feet long if you just let them go. They're beautiful. Or if you put them in the ground, they'll do the same thing like that. They'll kind of flow through in between the rocks and grow very, very good plant for here, okay? This is germander, did I get that right? Yeah, germander. Nice little perennial. This is as tall as it gets, and it just mounts, just keeps spreading like this. Great perennial, blooms a long time, and holds, the root structure goes down about 18 inches, just holds that soil in place. So a good perennial bed for either just beds or in the yard, soft than rock. Treat this like a shrub, put it on the same system as your trees and shrubs, it'd be happy. This one I use quite a bit at the base of my trees. So I don't think it looks natural to have a tree, let's say a beautiful ash or aspen or an apple tree, whatever kind of tree you got. All of a sudden we take rock and go right to the trunk. That's not the way God intended that to happen. That's man-made. That just looks different. It looks odd to me as a plant guy. So I plant these right where that drip emitter is going to the tree that waters the tree. I plant that right there so I get 2 for 1. And then this will take the same water cycle my trees will take, about once a week, once every 10 days or so. And then it fills in around that base and gives me an underplanting, what they call it. Right? It looks like this life is erupting from the ground, and then rock is outside of that. So this is called heuchera, or the old-fashioned name, your grandparents called it coral bells, is the name. It comes in all kinds of colors, green, purple, chartreuse, a lot of different foliage color. You're really not planting this for the flower, rather insignificant. You're planting it for that foliage. And it's most years it's evergreen. Now if you get a real cold winter, you're a little rough, but it will take shade, take sun, it'll take anything you give it. Okay. I do notice as well, the darker colored ones are javelina resistant, rabbit resistant. The lighter colored ones are not. So I notice they like the lime greens, but they don't like these. I don't know why. It's a taste or something. Oh, what else? This is a good native. This is yarrow. Grows wild. Okay, gets up maybe about this tall. Gets a yellow spiky flower on it, and then it just spreads. It kind of mounds. It just spreads like this. This one plant will get 3-4 feet around. One plant. Then it will reseed and come up in other parts. A good native plant for the mountains of Arizona. It just grows wild out in other areas. They use it in hydromulch on the side of roads to kind of seed that cut. They'll use this because animals don't eat it. Drought hardy, naturalizes, reseeds. It's got a lot of things that are good for us, for ground covers. This one I use by my pond. Anyone know what this is? Lamb's ear, very good, yeah. Does it, evergreen, does this. It's got this fuzzy leaf that makes it very drought hardy. Animals don't eat it. It's a tough little plant. It looks soft as can be, but it's tough as nails. And so it looks really nice against the pond. Kind of just softens up that edge of the pond for me. Little history, little plant trivia. Back before we had plumbing, we had outhouses, right? So you'd walk out the back and go to the outhouse, keep the stink out there, not in the house. You would line the outhouse from the house to the outhouse with this, and you probably didn't have toilet paper as much then either, so it's a nice bright color. It's soft as can be. It's good to use as toilet paper in the outhouse. Okay, and it's bright, so in a dark night you could see the line. You would actually line out how to get to the outhouse, and then kind of twofold benefit. Okay. Anyway, I don't know where I came up with that. This is called lamb's ear. Lamb's ear, yeah. Because it looks like a lamb's ear. Okay. This, what variety is that? Cranesbill? This is Cranesbill. It's got the prettiest little blue flower. True blue. Like a blue flower. More of a shade-loving plant. It's got an area that's kind of next to the house. that overhang by the front door. This would be great for, this is as tall as it gets, and it just starts sending off these runners sideways. This plant's gonna get about 3 feet around, just the prettiest blue flowers, and it will come back every year doing the same thing. Okay, those are all the perennials. By no means all, just a few. I had to keep the class at an hour, so it's the few for that 10 minutes I just went over perennials. Yeah. Cranesbill, C-R-A-N-E, Cranesbill. I don't know how they came up with that name, but there we go. In the back. Question or just raising your hand? Oh, you might be up here helping me teach in a minute. Want something else? Got it? Okay, let's go over shrubs. We've already gone over creeping or running, trailing type of junipers. There's a whole series. There's greens, there's blues, there's golds. There's a lot of different junipers that stay low and spread. One of my favorites, especially for rock lawns that have real dark chocolatey type of rock. It's real dark. You need something light sometimes and more green. This with a dark colored rock, it's just going to blend right in. Sometimes you want a contrasting plant, so I've got some of that in the backyard. I use this as old gold juniper, and so it gives me this beautiful gold against this real dark backdrop, and it's bright. As you overlook it from the deck, you go, oh, look at that. It's like a bright spot glowing in the landscape. So you can think in terms of design, but it's equally as hardy as any other juniper. Nothing eats it, I hardly water it, I forget it's there. Just a consistent ground. I planted these maybe 5 years ago, and now they're about this big around. Just a big spreading. They're about this high, about this big around. Just a nice bright spot. Got 2 or 3 of them back there. Growing some old gold juniper. Again, pick the color you like and just go with it. If you've got a lot of crushed gold, granite, maybe you do want to go with more of the blues and the greens, because this will blend right in. Gold with gold, it's going to blend right in. So think contrasting colors, it will look better, more naturally. The same thing, there's a whole series of euonymus. Broadleaf evergreen shrub. This is tall as it gets. Okay, it only gets inches tall, but it spreads 6-8 feet wide. So it's a great plant for evergreen. Sometimes that bright color looks good. Grows in shade, grows in sun. I find it does better in the sun than in the shade. Sometimes you get some mildew, a powdery mildew on the leaves in the shade, especially if it's in a stagnant corner which is dark. It tends to have more issues. Plant this out where it's got airflow and sun, not an issue in the world. Okay, sometimes rabbits can eat these though, so if you're right out, we're in the thick of the forest, probably go more junipers, or I'll show you another one in a second. Yeah?
How hardy is it? Because I have an area that's cactus.
So how drought hardy? This is not a native. Junipers are more hardy, more drought hardy. It's tough, but I would put it on a drip system. And I'd water it once a week or so. Maybe twice a week the first year, and then after that, about once a week, but it won't go all by itself, not like a cactus. So in that regards, treat it like a fruit tree or like a rose bush or like a big tree or something. You do fine like that, okay? But a lot of plants, when one emitter, you get a plant that's 6 feet wide, that's pretty good. I've already talked about that one. I actually use this one a lot on my driveway. I want something pretty. When I drive into my house, or if you come over as a guest, I want to be welcomed. I want my landscape to go, you are looking good. I'm so glad you're home. Welcome. That's what a landscape should do. So this one I planted alongside the drive, just so, because this is a ground cover rose, or carpet rose. There's a lot of different names coming out. It only gets about this tall, less than knee high. I've got several colors, and I just took a triangular pattern, and I just went down the driveway. They're all in bloom right now. They've started blooming in April. They'll be in bloom through November. That's a great plant for your. It's not drought hardy, really. I mean, I treat it like a rose. I water it like a tree. I water it once a week, and they're happy as can be. And I fertilize it about 3 times a year. It just does this constantly. So it's a good low care, low growing. I'll butcher it with a head shear every March, and that's all I do to it. Fertilize it and prune it. That's it. Great little ground cover for here. This is a native. You might want to consider this one. This is a creeping Mahonia or creeping Oregon grape. It truly grows wild up in the Bradshaws. It's an evergreen, gets a little yellow flower in spring, and it will get a little tiny grape on it. That's the name, Oregon grape. It's a little edible berry that you'll never get to taste because the birds love them. So they'll be all over it. But it's a great little evergreen. This one can be a little aggressive. You do want to put it where you can abuse it. Neglect it, it'll do better with that. If you treat it with any kind of care, it will grow and just kind of take over, which might be good on a hillside or kind of a more problem area. But I would put that in the ground. It'll go by itself after a couple of years. You can let it go by itself. Isn't that pretty? Nice little evergreen. You wouldn't guess it was a native. This is also a native. This grows wild. My daughter and I, is a father-daughter thing. Before she goes off to college on Thursday, we took the razor out and we just went in the back country. Way back in between Senator Highway and came out just north of Kirkland. So we were way out in the deep forest. This is just growing wild out there. This is called Grow Low Sumac. It's a low-growing sumac. It only gets this tall, then spreads. And there's no limit to how far this will spread. Gotta be careful where you put it. Don't put it in the middle of a flower bed or all that will be left is this. But on the hillside, it's great. This is deciduous. It will lose its leaves in the fall, but it's actually most famous in the fall. I sell most of them in the fall because they turn this beautiful, glorious orange color. Spectacular fall color. So you get a lot of different things going on with that, but it's just a good native. Water it for a couple of years and just don't care for it anymore. That's how you treat that native. This one we plant often with these. This is juniper. We'll often put these in with them. This is cotoneaster, or the rookies call it cottoneaster. That's how it's spelled. Cotoneasters. If you want to sound professional, that's the way to call it. This is again, this is an evergreen. Gets a white flower in spring with this beautiful red berry that will form, and it keeps that berry right through winter. Very stunning. This is a very mature one. This is as tall as it gets, but it will go almost unlimited, at least 10 feet out and around. So it's get a lot of plant, a lot of coverage for the plant with the cotoneaster or cottoneaster. Okay. This one gets a little taller. What is that? Maybe 2 feet tall. They also make some that are shorter. This one's called strebes. This is as tall as it gets, only ankle high, but still spreads. A little bit smaller leaf to it. Same flower, same red berry, but cotoneaster is a great plant for here, and it will naturalize. Treat it like a juniper or something else. They're companion plants to each other. Full sun, just a nice green plant. Okay. One that's related to our native manzanita. Actually, this is our native manzanita, the one that gets tall, like this tall. That's this guy. This is a cousin. This is also manzanita. It's called knick-knick. I don't know where they came up with that name, but it's manzanita. This is as tall as it gets, and then it spreads. So it's a ground cover, manzanita. Same red stems to it, same evergreen leaf. So it's a great plant, another plant that can naturalize. This one's a little bit slower growing, so you probably want to buy a few more of them and pack them in a little bit tighter. But once you get it going, it's drought hardy as can be, tough as nails. Where things won't grow, this will grow. So manzanita. Cotoneaster. This one is not technically a ground cover, but I like it, so I brought it. This is called tiger eye sumac. Again, it's related to our native sumac. It naturalizes really well. I put this at the front edge of my pond. Ponds are dark. It's a deep, dark, like mysterious black. So I wanted something to be bright. And so I put this in front of it, and so it's got this really bright yellow spot, which really gives this contrast, like screams designer style. I mean, you'll notice it when you walk back there and wow, that looks pretty nice. This is as tall as it gets. It's a little bit taller than a ground cover. Maybe it gets another foot or so high, but then it runs, pops up, runs and pops up. It just keeps running and popping up in places. So in certain areas in the yard, that's a good thing. Let her go. I wouldn't put it in the middle of a flower bed again, because all you'll have left is sumac. Sumac is a native. So I watered this for the first year, and then I cut it off of all irrigation, all care. I planted 3 of them in a triangular shape. I wanted to fill up a space about like this big, put 3, and now it's nothing but that. It's now trying to go underneath the pond to come up the other side. It's wanting to escape, so I keep controlling it. It's going to take some control, but I love the brightness, I love the ease, the care. It's just bright, cheery, and you'd never guess it was a native. It just looks too lacy. It looks more like a fern than it does like a native. That's a great plant. Low, low care. Animals do not eat sumac. It looks delicious, but they won't touch it. I think it's got a milky sap to it that's kind of, they don't like, okay? Lastly, for the shrub, then we'll move to vines. This is a star. What's the name of this? Blue star juniper. Isn't that pretty? It's as tall as it gets and just spreads out, kind of mounds. So again, it's related to the juniper kind of stuff. So a good, very deep-rooted erosion control kind of plant. Questions on shrubs? There's a lot of more choices than that. You can go yuccas, all kinds of stuff. But these are some that are fast-growing, big, a lot of coverage, quickly. So I kind of curated them so that would fit this topic a little better, okay, than just anything. Okay, let's go to vines, shall we? A lot of choices for vines. And they're all right here. Why don't we start with the number 1 seller, this one. This is honeysuckle. Hall's honeysuckle specifically. They make a lot of honeysuckles. This is the number 1 seller. This is the one as a kid, used to the yellow flower, take the stamens out, suck on the nectar. That's this one. Okay, pretty flower, very fragrant. Evergreen most of the years, I call it semi-evergreen. If we get a harsh winter, it can defoliate, but usually it's got some foliage on it. What I would do with this is I'd plant it in the ground, I'd take the stakes off, and I would train the tendrils in different directions. I'd pin them to the ground, and they'll start to root there and keep spreading. There's no limit how large this one will grow. You train it until you don't want to train it to go any further. Just keep spreading. Okay, so honeysuckle, very good. Animals don't eat it, it's a pollinator. It's got a lot of pluses to it. The other native that grows wild, this one, is probably the only true native. Well, I guess this is the only true native. This grows wild in the mountains around us. This is Virginia creeper. I would change the name myself. I would call it Arizona creeper because I'd rather be us get credit than Virginia, but it grows wild in both. This one is famous in the fall for its red color. I think this one's actually red wall Virginia creeper. It is bright red. I mean brighter red, deeper red than even a fire engine. I mean it is red. But it just does this. Nice green, creeps up anything you want. It doesn't have to creep up though, you can also creep out. That's how it grows native. Grows in the wild, on the ground, as a ground cover. And you can do the same thing. This is where that spot, this would be the one where you want to have a vine growing up a rock face. This is a great one for that. Okay? It is deciduous, it's going to lose its leaves, but it's a native, it will naturalize by itself. Animals don't eat it. So it fits all that Arizona, I'm going to be happy here. If I can just get the soil to cooperate, it's going to grow. This is a cousin to it. It's such a popular plant. This is called golden showers. If you got a dark spot, a shaded area, and just that blends in, it's too dark. Sometimes this is variegated. Basically, they took the same leaf, they put gold specks all over it. So it's a variegated Virginia creeper. They're the same plant, just you like blonde or brunette. That's the only real difference. So they're going to grow up again. I would plant it, take the stake off, spread out the tendrils, go in the direction, or I would pin it to the wall that I force it to grow where you want it to grow. Don't let a vine grow where it wants to grow, or it'll grow in the wrong direction every time. In fact, down in the drip irrigation parts, they have a pin, a very heavy gauge wire. It's got a U shape. I use those often for vines. I'll just pin it to the to the wall, to the ground, and I just let it go. So I know it's made for drip irrigation to hold the tubing down, but it works really good on vines as well. A package of 25 costs like nothing. So easy way to go. This one I used, it doesn't look like much, but it's an evergreen. It's one of the few evergreens, true evergreen. I have this 6-foot wall, again the patio, I'm on this huge hill. And so I've got this 6-foot wall to get to the patio. It was stark, it looked awful from down below. I wanted to soften this thing up. So what I did is I put a trellis up there, and then I trained this to grow up. And then I put a metal bench, basically, on top of that, so it grows up the trellis, up the bench. It just looks like life is flowing now from down below where the pond is up to the patios. It's a designer's dream. Everyone comments on it, and then I train the vine to take on the shape of the metal benching, basically. It looks stunning, and it's evergreen. Has a little flower to it in the spring. It's very fragrant. It's called Akebia, 5-leaf Akebia. It's one of the few evergreens we can grow here. Everything else is deciduous, except for this one, English ivy. This one's also evergreen. Can be a bit aggressive. This one, small children, dogs have been lost in ivy. So it takes over whole houses. It will grow through the wall and come into the living room. It's aggressive. So you want to be careful where you put this. But it does have a function. So you do want to maintain it, keep it under control, because this one left unchecked, again, your house will be swallowed by ivy. So you do want to watch. But it's an aggressive vine. It's evergreen up that rock face, especially where it's more shaded. I noticed that in the full sun, it can get a little scorched in June. The leaves can get brown to it, and then when the monsoons come, it's fine. So it does better when it gets some protection to full shade. So full sun out there on the rock face, probably not ideal for this one. There's some better choices. In the back.
Yes, I have 3 ivy vines going up some boulders under my front deck.
Yep.
And next to the last one, I have an old rusted piece of, like an antique that I purchased and set right next to the ivy. That particular ivy is dead. The other 2 are just fine. Does rust have any impact whatsoever?
So her questions for those listening online, and for over here, she's got a whole row of ivies, but the one by the structure that's some sort of art piece that's got a little rust, does the rust affect the ivy? No. If anything, it would help it. You get an iron pickup, or so there'd be a benefit. It's in the soil. Something's in that soil. And the next question comes, yeah, but all the other 40 are fine. This one, why? It's at the end of the drip line. It's not quite getting the water. These are the soil change. Something's different right there. What I would do, I'd just abandon that whole ivy, fertilize this one a little more, cause it to grow over there. I'd just kind of compensate as things fill in and mature. I'd compensate that way. But to answer your question specifically, no, rust will not affect plants. Not our rust. Certain areas maybe. If you're on a well where you're in the middle of an iron deposit, but you would see rust spots showing up everywhere if that was the case. That rust off that ornament is not going to affect that plant. No. Something else. Anything else? Going down vines? This one is actually related to this guy. They're actually the same species. Just this one's got a 5-pointed leaf, and this one's got a 3-pointed leaf. But they're related. This is Boston ivy, Virginia creeper. So they're both deciduous. They'll lose their leaves. They're both very tough. If you have a big wall, big space, sometimes you get too much of a good thing. And so if you've got a 50-foot hill, the idea would be plant 8 foot of this, and then change it up, plant another 10 feet of this, and plant another, so it looks more natural. Looks like it's just erupted with life here. And from the beginning of creation, all of a sudden you moved in and, oh, here we are. That's what you want it to feel like when you're back there. So to change that up, for me, I had a big chain link fence at a previous house, and I don't like chain link. It screams 1960s, please. It's too cheap to put in the good stuff. It just doesn't quite look the same. Too much galvanized. I don't know. So I wanted to soften it up. So I took lemons and made lemonade out of it. It was magical. So I took every 8-foot panel and I planted a different kind of vine. I put some fruit trees in front of that and I created this secret garden walled in effect. And I changed the variety of vine by each 8-foot panel. And all of a sudden it just feels, I mean, everyone would comment going, wow, it's pretty. Every January, February, I take the head shears, I trim it back to that fence line as close as I could without catching the chain. It'd grow out and it looked great every year. So you can do the same with a wall, do the same with a finch, you can do the same with just a hillside. So those are some ideas. Main thing is too much. If you have 100 feet, all the same thing, probably in our informal landscapes, it'll look more natural to change it up every once in a while. You can grow grapes on there, raspberries, blackberries, yeah.
How drought tolerant is that compared to the native Virginia creeper?
How drought tolerant is the Boston ivy to the Virginia creeper? Specifically, I don't know. I can tell you they'll both be very similar. Which one is more by what percentage? I'm not sure. They're both tough. Really, really tough, yeah. This one I've seen grow at Yavapai College up a huge wall. I mean, like 2-3 story wall. It is glorious. I think it's self-clinging too. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's self-clinging. Yeah, it's got its own little tendrils that'll attach. Doesn't need it now. It's self-clinging, meaning you got a beautiful stucco house. You put it right there, it is going to self-cling, and when you pull it off, it's going to take some stucco. Same with ivy. It's going to take, so be careful. There you may want to give it something to cling on to instead of your house. So there's ideas for each. This one I brought just as an idea. This is a raspberry. I use my fence line going downhill the backyard. I like birds. I love blackberries. I love raspberry. I like berries. They're like, oh, delicious. They're like my weakness, my kryptonite. I just can't resist it. I plant a lot of raspberries about every, I can't panel. I've got several, grapes, raspberries, blackberries, going down the hillside. Mainly to soften up the cedar fence. It just looked had too much hardware. Wanted to feel more garden-esque unless I'm imprisoned here. Instead, I get to be here, so I change the feeling. And so I use raspberries quite often. I think you can use raspberries. They naturally tend to creep. You can actually put them on a ground cover, use them as a ground cover if you wanted, and then eat the berries. The top part of the yard is all mine. The back down towards the bottom behind the pond, I let the birds have them. And they love it. And it's like a flock. It's like every neighborhood bird comes to our place for water and food. I don't have any feeders up, but it's ridiculous how loud the birds are in the spring. I mean, in the morning, when they're nesting and mating, it is ridiculous how loud they can be. That's what I like. So I planted for them specifically. And they retain the hillside. Blackberries, especially, they're almost a weed. They come up and run. So I let them go up and down the fence line. As soon as you come out in the yard, shovel to the head, pop it off. But as long as you come up and down the fence line, good. And more berries than I know what to do with. I have them on the same drip system as the trees. They're fine. Okay, so they're pretty moderate water user. The last one is trumpet vine. Probably the most famous of all the summer bloomers. Big red flowers. They've had big red flowers it's like a honeysuckle on steroids. Huge red flowers. Hummingbirds think they've died and gone to heaven. Big, aggressive, drought-hardy native plant. Very tough. Very aggressive. So be careful where you put it. I noticed it at the college again. They use them as a ground cover. They've got big boulders. You go up to the admin office. On the right and the left, you'll see trumpet vine just growing on the ground. You've got big metal structures filled with rock. They've got them growing up and covering those as well. So they're using them as a drought-hardy way to soften up the landscape. Okay? That's the plants. We're 1 hour into this. Why don't I go over how to plant and get the most out of your plantings? Then we'll ask you a couple last questions, and then we'll call it all good. Sound good? Okay, so how to plant. Let me pull up a chair. It's going to be real easy. Oh, let's do this one. This is a ginormous specimen. This is Feeling Blue Deodar cedar. Deodar cedar grows, most of the biggest evergreen trees you see in your neighborhood are deodar cedars. Huge 50, 80 foot tall evergreens with ginormous swooping branches 25 feet wide. It is magnificent. Drought hardy, tough. This is a cousin to that, only grows out. So it's called Feeling Blue Deodar cedar. So if you want a place where you want something really special, different, unusual, a conversation piece, this does that. Evergreen, big flowering plant. I use it again on the back side of the pond. We just go, wow, look at this. It forces the eye to the pond and the water going through. It's a specimen. We look good in a container, raised bed, or just in the ground. So how to plant this. This is a 10-gallon size plant. That's the size of the pot. Whether it's a 5-gallon or a 1-gallon, it doesn't matter. You're planting the hole will be the same depth as your bucket. 3 times the width, round, saucer shaped, okay? Much easier to dig a shallow hole than it is a deep hole. Now some of you contractors, you've got backhoes and heavy equipment, you're not gonna like this, okay? Don't go deep, go shallow and wide. Roots don't go down, they go out. Here there's nothing for them to go down to. More rocks, more boulders, more caliche, they're going sideways. That's where they can breathe, gather water. It's where the nutrients are. So if we know that's how the roots are going to grow, let's encourage them to grow that way. And so we dig that hole out. Now, we have that dirt off to the side. You have to screen some of that dirt. Now, some of you have debris, rocks, anything bigger than a golf ball. Get that out of there. There's nothing but damage your roots. They'll heat up in summer and just bake the roots. You want to screen that down. The water molecules can't wrap themselves around big chunks. You want smaller particles, smaller, more refined soil. Some of you just hit a rock. Once you get done digging out the boulder, you got no dirt left. There you have to supplement, okay? So if you're in a soil where it's really hard, you're not sure if it's going to drain, test it before you plant. Dig your hole, fill it with water in the morning. If it still has water sitting there at the end of the day, you did not dig a planting hole, you dug a bathtub. Plants are not going to grow in that. They're not going to like that. They want to breathe. They give off oxygen at the roots, at the foliage. They need oxygen at the roots. If you fill up all those air pockets with water, you're going to drown. So you want to make sure that hole drains, same depth. So for this plant, it's going to be, what is that, 14 inches, 12 inches deep, this big around. Just add a bucket on either side. Everything is the same. Vines, trees, perennial, whatever. Same depth, width, okay? Now, we've screened the soil. We want to add 1 part mulch. Let's see it so the folks on Facebook can see it. 1 part mulch to 3 parts soil, or 1 shovel for every 3 shovels of native soil, okay? So I've cheated some. I've gone as high as 50-50. I hit a big rock or something. I need to fill in some more. I've gone ahead and put more. If you go more than 50%, this is too soggy, holds too much moisture. What we're trying to do is add organic back into that soil so it attracts the worms, it attracts the mycorrhizal colonies, it attracts the things that are good for the soil. It enlivens the soil, gives them something to take nutrient from, and we're changing the structure of the soil so it keeps the soil from compacting back down. Or if you're in sandy soil, out by Granite Mountain or something, it's real sandy, it holds moisture in around the roots. Either way, it's going to benefit you, okay? Some of you have no organics left. That little bit of topsoil you had, the contractors scraped it right off. You have nothing organic, nothing good left. You're going to have to add it back into each hole. And this is the way to do it. Something we make ourselves, locally sourced, it's the natural, it's good for local planting, okay? Now we're going to take that, blend it all together, backfill around the roots, pack it in, water it. That's it. That's how you do it. A couple other things I do though, I do add at the very end, I'll sprinkle some of the all-purpose plant food around it, on top. Some folks blend it in, I don't care, just get some on there. I like shortcuts, and so I just backfill, sprinkle it on top. As you irrigate or it rains, it'll release a little food for about 3-month period. And it's organic, so it's not going to burn. It's not going to, if you get too much of it, it's less, excuse me, less likely to burn, okay? And then I water it in. Grab a little bit of water. I water it in with root and grow. This is a transplant shock. This plant, the only home it's ever known is this bucket. It's like open heart surgery and brain surgery at the same time. When you pull it out of that, put it in the ground, it is going to go into shock. It's going to be stunned. So this helps stabilize it. You're going to break some roots when you put it in the ground. This will help where those roots break. It'll help it form out more roots. So I'll use this every other week or so until I see the plant stabilized. Once I see new growth, another flower bud, something happening, I go, oh, it's happy now. I stop it from this, and the fertilizer will take over, okay? That's how you plant. Again, you'll have a handout here shortly with that whole thing right in there, how to do it, with a picture of the whole thing. So any other question on how to plant?
Do you break up the root ball?
Do you break up the root ball? I do not. Now, if you get an old plant, let's say you buy a plant from Home Depot, something, I don't know, some other competitor. Sometimes their plants are overgrown. They'll have what they call root bound. The roots will start spiraling. That's a plant usually from last year carried over. That I would actually cut or sever or try to root prune is what we call it. I'll take a knife and just shave it so I can root prune the roots. That will start sending roots this way. Once they start growing this way, they keep growing that way. They don't stop. So if you root prune, it'll start to come out. Some plants like cottonwoods, willows, really aggressive plants, sometimes they'll bump up against. I might try to massage the roots a little bit, but these are my babies. When I've grown them since they were little pups. I treat them with care. I don't take too much dirt off, so be careful. You get too much. If in doubt, go a little less. But I might massage the outside. Good question though. Yeah. Anything else? Good class. Yep. You're with him, huh?
I am. Which vines are good in full sun?
All of them, but this one.
All but the ivy.
All but the ivy are good for full sun.
So the Boston
And there's
ivy-
more choices. I just brought the faster growing, tougher vines. That's what all these plants are. The more aggressive. I figured this class, you're here for a reason. I need to fill in quick. So I've got some erosion stuff happening, but there's more choices than just this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Which plants are better for areas that get walked down a little bit? You know, generally
Which-
slope, but there's
Good.
some foot traffic, not a lot.
Which plants are good for areas that get some traffic, foot traffic, dog traffic, people traffic? Question, right? For myself, I use creeping thyme. It's an herb. It's about this tall. I've got entire lawns of creeping thyme, and I've got dogs. I don't want to mow. That's my mix. My kids left the house. I got 4 kids. They were the people that mowed. I don't want to run a mower. So the second the last kid left, I pulled out all the lawn, put in patios, and thyme lawn. There I mow it twice a year if I have to, just to keep it maintained. It's evergreen, gets a flower, it's herbal smelling, and it will take the dog traffic. I do notice it gets a little bit of spotting with the dogs, but it quickly covers itself. That's one good choice.
Pretty rabbit resistant.
It's rabbit resistant because it's an herb. I think you can use oregano that way, same way, creeping things that grows out like that. Those are two good choices. Anything else? Hey, Vincent. Yeah.
Where's your house?
I'm not saying, I actually try not to be found, but you know, the internet anymore, it's so easy to find people, so, yeah. Anything else? Good class. I will hang out. If you've got other questions, come look at the plants, feel free. And a little insider secret, I didn't take the ugliest plant on the bench, I took the prettiest. So if any of these are of interest to you, grab it, and then you can go look. You can go compare it to the other ones wherever they're at. Okay. Thanks, you all. You can clap.